Hi, welcome to Sexy First Friday for July. Hope everybody's feeling great and having a nice summer. We're just gonna wait for Lyndsey. Okay. Hopefully she's joining.
Hi,
Hi,
Sam.
Lyndsey. How you feeling today?
Good. Can't believe it's been a month again already.
It goes so fast. So we're back for part 2 of our type combinations episode, which we did last month. We started in June, and you can catch that on both of our Instagrams. But we'll introduce ourselves again just in case there's new people here. So I'm Sam E Greenberg. I'm a sexuality researcher and an Enneagram and sexuality coach. And my research focuses on how Enneagram type relates to patterns of sexual desire and expression.
And I am Lyndsey Fraser. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, as well as a certified sex therapist, an IA accredited professional out of Minneapolis, Minnesota, where I have a small private practice where I specialize in relationships and sexuality utilizing the Enneagram. So that's us.
So what we did last month, starting in June, we're focusing on type combinations, both on relationship, romantic dynamics, and sexual dynamics. Obviously, there's so many type combinations. We only covered about 8 or 9 last time. So what we want to do this time is just jump right in and get as many as possible. We have all of the combinations we have in our trusty hat where we pick them out from. They're all requests from you, the audience. So everything that we've covered so far and everything that we will cover has been requests that we've had. We tried to put the ones that we had multiple requests for in. So hopefully we'll cover the ones that you're most curious about. And we're going to jump right in, I think. So I'm going to just pick one out of the hat. All right. 2 and 4. Lyndsey, this one's all you. Take it away.
So what we have with 2 and 4 is that they are both heart types. I've only seen a few couples of this type dynamics. This isn't necessarily my area of expertise, but one of the things that I have noticed sort of in the relational aspect is that the mood fluctuations of the 4, sometimes the 2 is trying to accommodate and figure out, like, what do I need to do to sort of meet the other person's needs, to kind of calm them or make them feel better sort of within that environment as well. I think sexually it can be, I mean, we've talked about the 4s. 4s have really high and, you know, luxurious fantasy worlds, right? And so sometimes the 2s are going to look to the 4s of, like, what do you need and want, and sort of that meeting the need of the want of the 4, and just kind of being able to accommodate sort of what they need and want. Sometimes the 2 may not be able to voice what they need or want sexually. Again, instinctual stacking will depend on this. You will see your sexual 2s being a little bit better at asking for what they need or want sexually, and engaging in that. But I think it's sort of, again, you know, sometimes the 4 might want the 2 to engage in the fantasy with them, and they may not know what they want or need sexually because they're often looking to the partner, and, you know, sex itself becomes this mechanism of sort of earning love that sometimes they haven't thought about the fantasies and the things that they need and want sexually. And they can both be really emotional because you've got both of those heart types sort of happening and occurring and kind of getting stuck within the emotionality world and all of that as well. Is there anything you would add, Sam, from what I have said?
I think 2 and 4 is more your area, but just what you're saying about the emotions, like, emotions are running so high in this couple, and you know, not just feelings in general, but feelings about sexuality can come into it. So definitely high feeling couple. Let's just move right along. We're going to get as many done as we can. Obviously, this is the, you know, brief overview. We're not diving deep because we don't have time to, but you can shoot us a message if you want to know more about any specific combination. So picking another one. Okay, interesting. 9 and 9. Lyndsey, even though you're a 9, I'm going to start with this one. So we got a couple of requests for same type relationships. I know we have 4 and 4 in there. With same type, double type relationships, that's when your dominant instinct and your stacking can be even more influential than it already is, because you have so many similarities happening that when you get to the like dynamics of chemistry, it's going to be more about the dominant instinct or even the wing. So with 9 and 9, it can be a couple of different ways. One of the ways is like pure inertia. So like the 9s, both of the 9s are so not moving that like there's a lot of stagnation in the relationship. Like not necessarily in a terrible way, but there's just not a lot of movement. That's one way it can go. Another way it can go with 9 and 9 is if you have a 9 with an 8 wing, like a strong 8 wing, or even a sexual 9, they're going to be way more outspoken, still a 9, but outspoken in their relationship than say the self-preservation 9 or the 9 with the 1 wing. So in that case, you get like the typical dynamic you would have with a more outspoken and a less outspoken partner, where the more outspoken partner might get their needs met a little better. Sexually, same. So all of that applies also to sex. So you can have like a lot of not initiating from both. So you can have like long periods without sex. Or again, if you have like a sexual 9 or 9 with an 8 wing, they can be like, why aren't we having sex? Like, why aren't you initiating? Because they're more comfortable with that. And then you can get that kind of dynamic. Lyndsey, you are a 9. Do you have anything to add?
I agree with all the things that you're saying. Interesting enough, I see lots and lots of 9s in my practice, but I've only seen one couple where it was 2 9s in relation. Actually, maybe 2 couples now where it's been 2 9s in relationship. And the inertia thing is really, I mean, in this case, they were, it was a self-preservation 9, and then I had self-preservation and a sexual 9. And you're right, exactly. The sexual 9 with the self-preservation 9 is going to be the more outspoken one, is going to be a little bit more assertive, but the inertia stuff, especially around sexuality, I'm thinking of the self-preservation 9s that I had. It's like nobody was initiating sex. And so there was a really hard time of like sort of moving into that and like who's going to be the asserter, who's not going to be the asserter. A lot of passive aggressiveness, body language communication, but kind of like unclear. You know, when you've got 2 people that don't know what they feel or what they need or want, when you're more like, you know, those average states of health, it can be really tough. But at the same time, they both understand each other pretty well. So, yeah,
that
exactly
is
what you
also what you, I don't want to go on too long, but that is what you get with a double type relationship, is there's a lot that doesn't need to be explained about yourself. Conversely, you have the same blind spots. So that's true of any double type relationship. Okay, I'm picking another one. 5 and 6. Lyndsey, you definitely handle this one. 6s are not my best area of knowledge. So this is all you.
Yeah, I've seen a handful of 5 and 6 dynamics in my office. I'll start with a little bit about what I have seen relationally happen and occur. And so one of the things with 6s is they're very much external processors, and they want that reassurance, and they're kind of saying everything out loud. And 5s are more in their head, and they're not saying or, you know, like not verbalizing the things. One of the things that I find too is like, you know, a lot of times when 5s really get into what they're really into, so like one of the couples that I'm thinking of, it's like he would be on his computer doing whatever he's doing on there, and like he doesn't even hear her. She was the 6. And like she could like, and like in her, she creates this story of like, you're intentionally avoiding me, you don't want to connect with me, you're not interested in me, all of these sorts of things. And like like he seriously didn't hear her. Like he is in the zone, which is what fives will do. They're kind of in that zone of like the thing that they're doing. And so the tip that I have given the 5-6 dynamic in that particular sense is like having the 5 have a place that they go to when they are in their zone. So like an office or a desk. If you don't have that space, closing the door, letting the person know like when you're open and available and when you're not. That can be huge for the 6 because 6s want that reassurance. And so like when you're not available, they tend to get more overwhelmed and need more reassurance from you. And so that's a relational aspect. The sexual aspect that I see is that, you know, one of the couples that I was seeing and I've seen is that 5s have this rich internal world around sexuality. And so sometimes there's fantasies and things that they want to do. And I have found for 6s in particular that like they can get really overwhelmed if you sort of try to implement something sexually within the moment, or sometimes even that conversation of like what it is that they need or want, they can get really overwhelmed with that. And so it's that ability to sort of like outside of sexual experiences, setting aside time for the 5 to share the fantasy and the ideas and the things that they want to do, because 6s most of the time will come along. Like they're actually really open to a wide variety of sexual experiences, but they need to know what to expect. And so I've had this dynamic with like a really rich 5's sexual world, and she would get really overwhelmed. But then they had the conversations ahead of time, and she's like, I can be down for whatever you want, whenever you want, as long as I know it's going to come, it's coming, and it's going to happen. So I think that's a huge aspect of the 5-6 dynamic around relationships and sexuality. Anything you'd add, Sam?
Well, that's 6s generally as well. It's like they generally are pretty accepting partners of whatever you want to be doing sexually, but they need like a certain kind of advanced, like thoughtful communication about it. And with 5s who are, you know, infamously bad communicators, that's going to be like tricky. And I'd say 5s need to stretch to the growth edge of like externalizing to words what they're envisioning, which was very difficult for 5s, so that the 6s don't get kind of like scared away. Okay, I'm gonna grab another one. Okay, 3 and 8. I can speak to this a little bit. I have 3 and 8 couples. So this is one double assertive, big power struggles. And this is one where the stacking matters a lot as well, because if you have, for example, a self-preservation 3 and a sexual 8, the sexual 8 is going to dominate the relationship, like hands down. But if you have, you know, a sexual 3, self-pres 8, it can be more even or reversed even. So this is double assertive, like I said, that means they go towards, and there's a lot of, you know, butting heads. But it can be for the good. I mean, conflict gets put out there, and 8s especially do this. So another thing you can see with 3s and 8s is 3s are a bit more conflict averse in the sense that they can feel that conflict like reflects poorly on them. 8s are not going to put up with that. 8s are going to be like surfacing all of the issues of the relationship, whether the 3 wants them surfaced or not. And often, you know, tactlessly, like in front of people, you know, in ways that the 3 is upset about, but that can help the 3 not be burying. So that can be some of the relational dynamics. Sexually, I think it just depends a lot, again, on what I'm saying. Like if you end up with a more dominant partner, which is more likely going to be the 8, then you can see the 8 like kind of like dominating the sexual life, meaning that it's more led by them. But this depends, again, on like the strength of the 3's personality. So you can get like really intense, satisfying dynamics, sexual dynamics, or you can get like sometimes stalemates where if the 8's not getting what they want or the 3's not getting what they want, they just like kind of fight it out and they're not having sex. So Lyndsey, what do you have to add about this?
I agree with all the things that you're saying. Like relationally, what I see is like these are going to be the people that they're going to be loud. when they have conflict. It's not quiet. But it is interesting, like what you said around the 3, because like what I do see sometimes is that 3s get really, they can get really defensive if their image is being challenged, right? So that ability of like, you know, and kind of dig in their heels a little bit about that or deflect from that is one of the other things that I've kind of seen with that particular dynamic. And I think sexually, like you said, it just kind of depends.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna just grab another one. Okay, 1 and 5. I think we talked about both of us speaking to this. So I'll start with more of the relational stuff. I have less insight on the sexual dynamic here, but a 1 and 5 relationship, you do see this quite often, this pairing. It has like this kind of genteel feel to it, like this polite, like respectful feel. And I think that's because 1s and 5s do have a good amount in common. They're sort of both information oriented, you know, quite driven, depending. They can both be perfectionistic, although of course 1s are more so. With like even conflict, you see like this, the way they handle conflict is like really respectful and a little bit subtle. So if like the 1 made the 5 angry, like they're not going to go and be like, hey, I made you angry, sorry about that. Not 1s aren't big on apologies. It'll be more of like they'll start doing extra sweet things to like make up for it. But so you get like a lot of subtle dynamics, like a lot of under the surface dynamics with 1-5 that like someone from the outside looking in might not even pick up on. Oh, you guys had a fight and now you're making up. It just looks like a regular interaction, but the 1s and 5s, they know what's going on. I don't know if that makes sense, but you go ahead, Lyndsey.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. And then one of the dynamics I see sometimes relationally, and I'll kind of move into the sexual piece that I see come up, is that 1s tend to move quicker. And so there can be frustration or irritation with sort of the 5 being slower to action or slower to movement or slower or procrastination. You know, those types of things can kind of come into play as far as relationally, you know, maybe more 1 high energy, or maybe more a little bit more 1 lower energy, and sort of how do you navigate that dynamic of the 1 and 5. Sexually, what I've seen come into play a little bit, and again, I think we've talked about, again, this would be stacking related, but sometimes with 5s, they have, you know, they can have some lower desire for relational sex. And so sometimes depending on the 1's idea of what sort of is the right and wrong way for sex to happen, especially if you had, say, like a social one where it's about the bonding and the connection, or even even a sexual one. Like I'm just even thinking about that one-on-one connection and like this is the right way and this is how sex should be happening and this is how frequently it should be happening, or the expectation that the 5 should be initiating because that's what they've learned around sexuality. Right? So like I'm thinking of one of the couples in my office where it's like, you know, the woman was a 1 and the man was a 5, and it's like, you know, men should be initiating sex. And if they're not initiating sex, what does that mean? And getting really stuck in sort of like that is the right way for initiation around sex to happen. And of course, as we know for 1s, everyone has their own definition of right and wrong, but they can kind of get stuck in sort of sometimes maybe social messages they got around sex, and 5s sometimes aren't going to be huge initiators, right? And so I think it just kind of, are they going to be more interested in like how much energy is sex going to take? And so I'll move into self-pleasure versus relational sex. And if the partner thinks that relational sex is the right way for sex to be happening, then there can be that kind of disconnect around that sexual piece. Anything else you would add, Sam, for 1 and 5?
I think that's it for me. I'm wondering if we can go like off our plan a little bit because we have a comment request. And I don't remember if we were planning to do 9 and 3 anyway, but I wonder if we can, for this person, maybe try to do 9 and 3, in this case, sexual 9, social 3. I'll start. We can like stumble our way through it. So with the sexual repressed 3, you get a lot of different dynamics than the stereotype of 3. Like you get actually a more of a 9 like vibe. Still they're a 3, like still they're image focused, still they care very much what people think, which a 9 does not. But in terms of their communication, like their extroversion, their assertiveness, like that's all decreased with the sexual repressed 3. So, and then a sexual 9 is like quite different than the stereotypes of a 9, in that the sexual 9 tends to be like more outspoken, still a 9, more able to articulate what they want. So I would think in this pairing, it's quite evenly matched, depending on like the topic or, you know, what's going on. You would have, you know, not so much with the 3 being way more assertive than the 9, which is what you would typically see in like a 3-9 dynamic. What do you think, Lyndsey?
Well, the thing that comes to mind to me is like relationally and even sexually is you have 2 attachment types here. So we have a 9 and a 3, and sort of that looking to the other about sort of how I should respond and interact. Now, there'll be differences with that, right? Because the 9's looking, but again, you've got a little bit more assertion with that sexual instinct with the 9, but they're still looking to the 3 of like, how do I need to show up to kind of keep my environment calm and kind of accommodate what you need or want within that. And then the 3's looking the other way and saying, what do I need to do to be impressive for you? So it might be really hard to kind of figure out like, how do we know what we want and like, and how are we not looking to the other to sort of fulfill that for us? So that's like a huge thing that I see with just attachment types in general is like, what do I want and need sexually versus my anticipation of like what the other person wants and needs sexually. So that would be what I would add for the 9-3 dynamic.
I also want to add, for in general, a sexual dominant with a sexual repressed in a couple, you do get like some tricky dynamics across type, where the sexual dominant is like wanting this more overt passion, and even a sexual 9 like initiate, like, oh, we're not having sex, what's wrong with us? You know, for a sexual dominant, sex is very important to like showing that you're passionate, showing that you're merged and connected. And with a sexual repressed of any type, they're going to be like less attuned to that. So you do get, with any type, with the sexual dominant, sexual repressed, you can get frustration from both, because the sexual repressed is like, you should know I love you, you should know why I'm sexually attracted to you without me saying it every day or multiple times a day. And the sexual dominant is like, can you please express more like how you feel about me? So that would be at play too here, I think. Okay, we actually have a lot left, so we're gonna keep on going, see how many we can get through. Okay, what about 8 and 9? What do you think, Lyndsey?
I see this couple dynamic a lot in my office. In particular, it tends to be men that are 9s and women that are 8s. And I think what kind of happens relationally with this is that, you know, the way that the 8 says things, they're very blunt, they're direct to the point. Sometimes they don't think about the impact of what they say, and for a 9 it is so important about how you say things, and they really like are like always monitoring tone of voice and like what that means. And it's like even just the intensity of an 8, one of the big things I do in my practice is like, is it intensity or is it anger? And 9s have a really difficult time sometimes deciphering this, and 8s are just intense in general, even when they're not mad. And so like a lot of times I'll model like, is this intensity or is this anger? Be curious sort of about this dynamic. Also, what I see is that, you know, the 8 wants things to move quicker. They will often make judgment statements about their 9 being quote unquote lazy. It's not an uncommon complaint. And so it becomes the dynamic between internal and external processor to, again, 8s are external processors. They're saying it all out. 9s are internal processors. They're thinking in their head. And so when they say things, those things hold weight. And so it can be hard sometimes for the 9 too when the 8's saying all these things. And it's like, well, is that fact? Is that what you think? And all of that as well. Sexually, I think what can happen is the 8 typically takes charge. Sometimes it can feel overwhelming or intense for the 9, but again, it would kind of depend sort of on that as well, because 8s tend to have higher sex drives, and they tend to also be more assertive around sex. And as we've talked about before, the 9 tends to have, depending again on stacking, right? Sexual 9s are going to have a little bit higher sex drive, but your social 9s and your self-preservation 9s are going to be on the lower end for reaching out for relational sex. And so there can be a lot of desire discrepancy and frequency is around how often sex happens in that dynamic. But I have seen it where actually the 8 had the lower desire, but that was about anger and frustration, and I could go all day into that. But that's some of the things that I see with the 9-8 dynamic. Would you add anything, Sam?
I'm gonna leave it with you because I think I want to try to do 2 more, like really fast. I'm gonna do 1 minute on 4 and 4. So I talked already about double type dynamics, so the same applies, but 4 and 4 is, oh my god, the chaos, like the emotional chaos, the amount of feeling, the amount of moodiness. Like I wouldn't say you see this pairing a lot, but I have seen it. And the reason they're attracted to each other is like, you understand me, you understand my depth, you understand my emotionality, you understand the importance of my moods. But oh my god, like it's such a roller coaster. Also depends, sexual 4s famously are more of a roller coaster, but up and down, and like the sex tends to be really like dynamic and satisfying because of the chaotic element. So I guess I'm painting kind of a negative light. I'm not saying it can't work, but if it is to work, there needs to be a lot of like work from both on stability. And I'm just gonna move right along because I want to get 9 and 7 done. I think we promised someone we do 9 and 7. So you take it away with 9 and 7, Lyndsey.
So what I see with the 9-7 dynamic again is, and again, I think, a lot of, sexual 7s are going to have pretty high sexual, desire for relational sex. And so like, I'm just trying to think of like, I have a self-preservation 9 and a sexual 7 in relationship right now. And I think one of the things that will happen is that, sex is play, sex is fun. I want to try this, I want to try that. And oftentimes 9s don't know what they need or want. And it can be this like going along, and the 7 wants to know like, well, what are your fantasies and what do you want to do for fun? And the 9's like, I don't know what I want or what I need or how I want it. And so it can feel sometimes like the 7 that the 9's just along for the ride and not necessarily voicing what they need or want. Sexually, I think also like you're going to have, typically, and both are positive outlook, both want to avoid conflict in the 9-7 dynamic. But what I will see is the 7 is going to be the more assertive one to bringing up the conflicts and the issues and the concerns. And then they get frustrated with having to do so because they don't want to. Right? And the 9 doesn't want to deal with the conflict either. I feel like too, like energy-wise, 7s are kind of a little bit more up here, and they're like, tick, 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 I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that, and like the 9 can get a little bit overwhelmed with that. The 9's down here like, I don't know what I think, I don't know what I want. I don't like sometimes there's space for me to even answer that question because the 7 continues to like just be like talking away. And so I've had that too, where it's like, I don't know where I want, and like that ability to kind of slow down. And giving like, giving each person or giving the 9 more space to come back to what they need or want. The 7 oftentimes wants that answer very quickly because they operate very quickly sort of within that realm, and the 9 often can't give that. So that's some of the things that I have seen with the 9-7 dynamic. I've only seen a handful of couples with this particular dynamic, but I think it can be a really beautiful dynamic as well. Anything you would add, Sam?
What I want to add, like a general overarching concept, is if we didn't cover your type combination, a good amount of what we're saying applies to partners of the type we're talking about regardless. So partners of 9s who are more assertive are going to be frustrated with the 9s not knowing what they want. So like you can get a sense from some of what we have covered, but also message us if you want to know more about your own type combination. And we're already at the end, so the last thing I want to say is we're doing a special edition Sexy Friday, Sexy Third Friday later this month, and we'll be like broadcasting live from the International Enneagram Association Conference. So that'll be Friday, July 21st, and it's going to be a half hour later than we normally do, so 1:30 to 2 Eastern, 10:30 to 11 Pacific. And if you're at the conference, it'll be right after the keynote speaker. So tune into that and send us your ideas for topics, because Lyndsey and I will be together in person. We're so excited to do a live together. And thanks for tuning in to the second part of Type Combinations.
Thank you for all those that joined, and we are excited to be seeing you twice this month.
Bye.
Bye.